Join our community by subscribing. Every click helps us share more stories like this one.
The introduction. The sun had barely begun its ascent on that crisp autumn morning in the quiet town of Maplewood. Mist lingered over the dew-kissed grass, painting a serene picture. Yet the tranquility was about to fracture, plunging the community into a chilling reality. Amidst the suburban aesthetic, a modest home stood on the corner of Pine Street, where Jenny Harrison, a dedicated schoolteacher, lived with her. She had become something of a fixture in the community, known for her unwavering kindness and commitment to her students. As the aroma of freshly brewed coffee wafted through the air, she prepared her children for another day at Maplewood Elementary. Routine enveloped them like a warm blanket, but a sinister undercurrent was already in motion, unbeknownst to the locals who passed through their daily life. That fateful day, after shuttling the children to school, Jenny returned home, her heart light with thoughts of the curriculum yet to deliver. Yet, when she opened the door, an unsettling stillness greeted her. The house felt wrong, a heaviness lodged deep in her chest. The living room, usually filled with scattered toys and the echoes of laughter, lay unnervingly quiet. As Jenny stepped further inside, her instincts prickled. The front door had been locked, yet it now swung slightly ajar. The television flickered silently in the background, but that wasn't what caught her eye. It was the shattered glass ornaments strewn across the floor, each shard glinting malevolently in the dim light. Panic surged as she fought to comprehend the implications of what lay before her, the electric hum of fear taking hold. In an instant, her world transformed from a picture of suburban normalcy into a tableau of chaos, with dread stretching its fingers around her throat. She reached for her phone, her hands trembling. There was no going back now. The call she made would send ripples through Maplewood, unearthing long-buried secrets and irrevocably altering the lives of many. The victim. As the sun began to rise higher in the sky, the first responders arrived, their sirens interrupting the once peaceful atmosphere of Maplewood. Officers gathered on the porch, their expressions a mixture of professionalism and concern as they assessed the scene. For Jenny, who stood trembling in the doorway, the warm autumn air felt cold against her skin, a stark reminder of the chaos that had invaded her haven. Inside the house, it took only moments for the officers to piece together that something horrific had occurred. Each fragment of shattered glass and misplaced item told a story that echoed with desperation. Jenny's heart raced as she relayed her movements over the past few hours, her mind racing through the possible scenarios of what had transpired within the confines of her. As officers inspected the living room, they noticed something that sent a wave of unease through the ranks. There were no signs of forced entry, which suggested a different angle of attack. Had Jenny known her perpetrator? The officers exchanged meaningful glances, a hardened realization settling upon them. Jenny was escorted outside, her breath quickening as she wiped tears from her eyes and tried to gather her thoughts. They assured her she would be safe. Still, the innocence of her life had been shattered, leaving her dangling precariously in a fog of uncertainty. The victim, as it turned out, was not just an individual in danger, but a mother and a teacher, two roles defining the essence of who Jenny truly was. Thoughts of her children flooded her mind. How could she explain this to them? At that moment, while officers canvassed the neighborhood for witnesses and probable suspects, the adrenaline coursed through their veins. They would soon learn that Jenny was not merely a victim of an invasive crime. Her life would become a beacon for uncovering a deeper truth hidden beneath the seemingly idyllic surface of Maplewood. The pursuit for answers had only just begun. Crime scene. The living room, once a hub of familiar warmth, now resembled a calculated scene of distress. As the officers moved cautiously around, their shoes crunching against the remnants of glass, they began documenting the chaos that had unfolded. A forensics team was called in, each member donning gloves and masks, transforming the space into a sterile zone of investigation. Jenny watched from the front step, her hands clasped tightly in front of her, filled with anxiety. Inside, the team began photographing every angle, collecting evidence from the once private sanctuary. They noticed that several items had been hastily overturned. A coffee table upended, children's drawings scattered, and Jenny's pursy battered leather beguine furled across the floor, exposing its contents like a personal diary of her life. Lead investigator Alex Monroe examined the room closely, noting a disruption of everyday life. He approached the large picture window which faced the street, a crucial point of observation. The blinds had been pulled open, perhaps signaling a struggle that had taken place near the light of day. As he squinted into the sunlight, a lingering curiosity nagged at him. How could this have gone undetected? A preliminary sweep revealed no signs of blood or overt violence, which led Monroe to consider the bigger picture. The chaos appeared tactical rather than haphazard, a calculated entry and exit. Only one door in and out the front door, and no signs of forced entry, hinted at a familiarity with the house and its rhythms. In those quiet moments, he contemplated what had propelled someone to invade the sanctuary. As more detectives arrived, Monroe directed his attention to the back of the house, where a narrow hallway led to the bedrooms. Each step reverberated with the weight of the investigation yet to unfold. Every door opened whispered secrets waiting to be revealed. Outside, the neighbors congregated along the edge of the property, their expressions a mixture of concern and confusion. They shared quiet whispers, all while their eyes inadvertently wandered toward Jenny, who remained lost in her thoughts. Her immunity, previously blinded by its own routine, stood on the precipice of awakening to an unsettling truth. Maplewood was not as safe as it seemed. A crime had rooted itself among them, and they would soon realize that darkness can dwell in the most unexpected places. The early investigation. The hours passed slowly as the initial chaos gave way to the systematic rhythm of the investigation. Detective Alex Monroe gathered his team in the living room, where the air still carried a hint of unease. They laid out the evidence gathered so far: photographs of the crime scene, a timeline based on Jenny's account, and notes about the neighborhood dynamics. Monroe glanced at the scattered items on the coffee table, family photo frames that remained upright and offered fleeting snapshots of happier times. Within each frame, laughter and love had been encapsulated, yet now stood as stark contrast to the fear simmering in their midst. He cleared his throat to regain focus. First, we need to build a profile of our victim, Monroe instructed, tapping a pen against his notepad. Jenny Harrison is known in this town as a single mother, beloved teacher. But what else do we know about her? One officer, Detective Sarah Collins, raised her hand. She has a tight-knit group of friends, some of whom were at her house just last week for a dinner party. They might have insights into any recent changes in her life. Monroe nodded, his mind already mapping out the next moves. They would interview her closest friends, gather background intel. Perhaps someone had noticed an odd interaction or a stranger lurking about. Meanwhile, forensic experts worked meticulously in the back bedrooms, searching for fingerprints and any personal items that might hint at the intruder's identity. Every detail mattered, particularly since no apparent motive for the break-in had yet surfaced. The phone rang, slicing through the tension in the room. It was the forensics team, reporting findings from a digital suite of Jenny's devices. We've retrieved her smartphone data, and it seems she had been texting someone frequently, perhaps a former partner. Monroe's interest piqued. Get those texts analyzed ASAP. We may be looking at a stalker or a situation gone awry. As they delved deeper into both Jenny's life and her relationships, the inquiry would transform from searching for a stranger in the shadows to unraveling the complexities of personal connections. Maplewood had indeed harbored secrets, and it was time to expose them, one thread at a time. Everywhere they looked, the web of apparent innocence was rapidly beginning to fray. The dead ends. Days turned into a blur as investigators dug through the layers of Jenny Harrison's life. But the more they pursued leads, the more elusive the truth seemed. Interviews with friends and family yielded little. While Jenny was well-liked, no one could pinpoint any recent tensions or conflicts that might attract malice. The sense of disorientation among the detectives grew, and frustration began to permeate the investigation room like a thick fog. Detective Sarah Collins sat at her cluttered desk, staring at the wall covered in notes and photographs. "I've spoken with her friends," she reported to Monroe. "They all say she was happy, no red flags in her life. Just an ordinary week, coming off some well-received parent-teacher conferences." Monroe rubbed the bridge of his nose, exhaustion creeping into his features. "What about her ex? We haven't ruled him out. He made any threats or showed erratic behavior. We need to explore that avenue further." The team continued to comb through messages and records linked to Jenny's phone. The frequently contacted number, belonging to her ex-partner Mike, appeared innocent at first. Most of the texts were logistical, coordinating drop-offs for the kids, Collins summarized. "But I'll dig deeper, maybe there's something there we missed." With every phone call and background check, new dead ends emerged, each one a stark reminder of the difficulty clawing at answers. There were no suspicious bank transactions, no strange purchases, and absolutely no history of harassment. Even with Mike, nothing substantial surfaced. He cooperated fully and expressed concern over Jenny's safety. As the team pressed further, they began to question the efficacy of their approach. Perhaps this attack stemmed not from a personal vendetta, but from a stranger passing through, a ghost in the night no one could identify. Monroe suggested a fresh perspective. They might need to canvass the area again, seeking forgotten witnesses who may hold the missing pieces of the puzzle. Collins returned to her notes, frustration binding her thoughts. Did they risk delving too deep into the lives of those who knew Jenny? Or were they simply grasping at shadows? As the walls began to close in, the truth remained stubbornly out of reach. Maplewood wasn't a town known for violence, but evil rarely announced its presence. No one could predict where it might lie, waiting for a moment of doubt to strike. A break in the case. With each passing day, the weight of the investigation hung heavier on the shoulders of the Maplewood detectives. While leads dwindled to mere whispers, a turn of fate arrived unexpectedly one overcast afternoon. The local grocery store, Sunshine Market, reported some strange activity from their security cameras. A day before the break-in, Detective Alex Monroe and Sarah Collins stood in front of the small monitor and the store's back office, their anticipation palpable. The owner, an elderly man named Mr. Collins, played back the footage, his finger hovering over the pause button. "I noticed something odd when reviewing the tapes," he said, squinting at the screen. As the video rolled, it revealed the quiet hum of afternoon shoppers going about their business. But then a figure entered the frame, a hooded individual who stood just beyond the glass entrance. Glancing around, Monroe leaned closer, his heart pounding as he spotted the dark silhouette. Its movements shifty and uncertain. "Can you enhance that shot, please?" Mr. Collins nodded, diligently adjusting the image. Suddenly, the figure blended into the crowd, the hood obscuring any distinguishing features. But just before leaving the frame, something caught Monroe's eye: a set of rings on the individual's left hand, shining against the dull fabric of the hoodie. "Frame it," Monroe instructed, his voice firm. The image froze, revealing the distinct design of the rings, an engraving worn and familiar, yet enigmatic. "I feel like I've seen those before." The detectives gathered back at the precinct, the renewed energy palpable. They expedited the process, sending the image to the graphic team for further analysis and comparison. In the meantime, they reinvigorated their investigation into Jenny's social circles, hoping those rings would unlock the mysteries that had evaded them thus far. Within hours, a surprising name surfaced: Sammy Yeager, a minor figure who mingled with some of Jenny's friends during social events. His offbeat jewelry had made him a topic of conversation more than once, and his past interactions with Jenny were murky at best. As they pulled his file, the pieces began to fall into place, revealing a man who had long struggled with shadows of obsession. Monroe's stomach clenched. They were drawing dangerously close to the heart of something darker than they had anticipated. A pair of rings had the potential to illuminate the path toward justice, but it remained to be seen whether Sammy Yeager's involvement would indeed lead to clarity or further complication. The clock was ticking, and Jenny's world hung in the balance. The suspect, with Sammy Yeager's name echoing through the precinct, Detective Alex Monroe felt a renewed determination wash over him. The seemingly innocuous socialite had suddenly turned into a focal point of the investigation. As they delved deeper into his background, they uncovered a history that was both troubling and perplexing. Yeager was known within Maplewood for his bohemian lifestyle, often seen at local gatherings where artists painted the nights away and musicians strummed their guitars. But those who knew him well whispered of something darker: a fixation on certain women, which had led to rumors of uncomfortable encounters. Nothing criminal, but enough to merit caution. That afternoon, Monroe and Detective Sarah Collins decided to pay Sammy a visit. They arrived at a nearby coffee house, a dimly lit venue known for its eclectic decor and casual ambient. The air was thick with the smell of roasted beans and the low hum of conversation sight. Within that chaos, they spotted him. A tall man hunched over a sketchbook, his pale fingers adorned with the very rings that had piqued their interest. Monroe's heart raced. They approached cautiously, the sound of their footsteps swallowed by the coffeehouse's bustle. "Sammy Yeager?" Monroe called, allowing the question to hang in the air. Yeager looked up, a hint of surprise in his eyes that quickly morphed into a guard. "What can I do for you?" he asked, his voice steady, betraying none of the apprehension beneath. "We'd like to ask you a few questions regarding Jenny Harrison," Collins stated, her tone even as she observed his reaction. Yeager shifted slightly in his seat, an almost imperceptible tightening in his shoulders. Jenny? Sure, I can help with that. As they began to question him about his interactions with Jenny and his whereabouts on the day of the break-in, his responses oscillated between casual indifference and visible agitation. He claimed to have only met her in passing during group gatherings, but acknowledged he had been at a party the previous week where she was present. A few probing questions later, Monroe felt the air in the room shift. We have footage of you in the vicinity of her home the day before her break-in, he said, maintaining steady eye contact. Yeager hesitated, his voice dropping. I was just out for a walk. This town is small. I walk everywhere. But the detectives weren't convinced. The nervous glances, the stuttered response to Yeager's behavior screamed of knowing more than he was letting on. Before leaving, Monroe handed him a card. We'll be in touch, Sammy. If you remember anything, don't hesitate to call. As they stepped out, Collins muttered, He's hiding something. We need to dig deeper. Maybe get a warrant to check his place for evidence. Monroe nodded, more convinced than ever that they had uncovered a critical link. They were edging closer to unveiling the truth hidden within Maplewood, and the answers they sought were wrapped up in the enigmatic, troubled persona of Sammy Yeager. The news tightened, and time was running out. The trial. The atmosphere inside the courthouse was thick with anticipation. Onlookers filled the public gallery, their faces a mixture of curiosity and disbelief, as they prepared to witness what had become the most talked-about case in Maplewood's recent history. The trial of Sammy Yeager. The once quiet town was now reverberating with discussions of fear, betrayal, and the quest for justice for Jenny Harrison. Detective Alex Monroe adjusted his tie as he took a seat at the front, the weight of the case heavy on his shoulders. The gallery buzzed with murmurs, many of them hearing the details for the first time now. Yeager's obsession with Jenny had blossomed into something darker, woven with jealousy and secrecy. Monroe recalled the stark image of the rings discovered at the scene, which had ultimately led them to this moment. As the gavel struck and the session began, the prosecuting attorney delivered a powerful opening statement. The evidence will clearly show that the defendant was not just a casual acquaintance of the victim, but rather someone who harbored suspicious intentions. We would demonstrate that Sammy Yeager had motive, opportunity, and a history of troubling behavior toward women he became fixated on. Throughout the trial, witnesses emerged like specters, each contributing to the tapestry of evidence. Friends of Jenny recounted conversations detailing Yeager's uncomfortable advances and the aura of possessiveness that surrounded him. Yet, amidst these testimonies, a nagging tension filled the courtroom as if certain pieces were still missing. In contrast, Yeager's defense attorney painted a picture of a misunderstood artist struggling with emotional issues. Well, I find your heart's struggling with emotional issue. My client is not a monster, he implored. He did not break into that home, nor harm Jenny Harrison. He simply admired her from afar. The prosecution is grasping its shadow. The trial dragged on, punctuated by careful examination of forensic evidence and statements from trauma experts that highlighted Jenny's strength in the face of fear. Regarding the timeline, both sides battled fiercely, trying to illuminate the gaps or minimize their significance. Yet, No amount of denial could erase the chilling evidence: the hours spent stalking Jenny's social media, the suspicious footprints leading from her home to his apartment, and ultimately, the very rings that tied him to that fateful day. Finally, after days of testimony, Monroe sat back in his chair, heart pounding. It all culminated in a powerful closing argument from the prosecution. "You will hear the truth, and the truth is that this is about more than just one man's obsession. It is about a mother, a teacher, and a friend who was violated in her own home. Jenny Harrison deserves justice for her children, and for everyone who has felt overshadowed by fear." As the jury filed out to deliberate, Monroe felt a mix of hope and anxiety. For Jenny and her children, he longed for a verdict that would bring closure, restoring their lives from the grips of trauma. Maplewood had been forever altered, and with that unsettling change came the desperate desire for healing and resolution. Hours passed, stretching into an eternity, before the jury finally returned. A foreman cleared his throat, casting a long look around the packed courtroom. With a simple nod from the judge, he proclaimed, "We find the defendant, Sammy Yeager, guilty of breaking and entering and stalking." A active breath was released, and in that moment, Monroe felt the burden begin to lift. Knowing justice had finally prevailed, yet aware that the scars would remain. Jenny Harrison's story may have begun with darkness, but perhaps now it could slowly carve a path to light. The aftermath. In the months following the trial, Maplewood began to rebuild itself, though the scars of the incident lingered in the minds of its residents. The verdict brought a bittersweet sense of closure to Jenny Harrison, who, despite her profound relief, now faced the daunting task of stitching her life back together. Jenny stood at her kitchen counter, the sun streaming through the window, illuminating dusty corners that had once been bustling with activity. Her children had returned to their routines, but echoes of that fateful day loomed large. She moved through their home with a newfound caution, acutely aware of the fragility of her peace. Although Sammy Yeager was behind bars, the shadow of his actions haunted. That day, she initiated counseling, seeking support not just for herself, but for her children as well. Together, they navigated conversations filled with both fear and healing. Guided by a professional, Jenny learned to replace the panic with the persistent push towards normalcy. "You are not just a victim. You are a survivor," her counselor reminded her repeatedly. Words meant to empower. But grounding was a slow and arduous process. In Maplewood, change was underway. A community once oblivious of the darkness that could encroach upon their lives began to ripple with collective awareness. Neighborhood watch groups formed, and town meetings were held to address safety concerns. The very fabric of trust that had once blanketed Maplewood felt frayed. They were no longer just a sanctuary. They were also a testament to resilience. Detective Alex Monroe observed the shifts within the community with a mixture of pride and sadness. The job had always been more than just a career for him. It was a commitment to protect and serve people he respected. While he'd hoped for a swift return to normalcy, he recognized that incidents of violence could never simply be erased. One evening, he attended a community safety meeting where Jenny spoke about her experience. Her voice trembled, but held a steady resolve. As she shared her narrative and the lessons learned through her ordeal, Monroe felt a swell of admiration. Jenny wasn't just recounting her trauma, she was transforming it into a catalyst for change, forging a dialogue about the importance of vigilance, communication, and compassion. In the aftermath of darkness, Maplewood was slowly rewriting its story. The town transformed into a place where neighbors looked out for one another again. A community birthed from tragedy yet resiliently bouncing back with courage and unity. For Jenny, healing was not linear. It came in waves. Some days, she found peace in the laughter of her children or the warmth of her friends' support, while others were swallowed by flashbacks of fear. Yet through it all, she forged ahead with an unwavering conviction to embrace life again, to reconnect with her passions, and perhaps even become a voice for those less heard. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a golden hue upon the town, Jenny stood at her front porch, breathing in the crisp evening air. Maplewood had changed, but so had she. This chapter, marked by challenge and resilience, was only the beginning of her transformation, one that would redefine not just her life, but the lives of those around. Reflection. The passing seasons enveloped Maplewood in a fresh cloak of life and color, but for Jenny Harrison, the essence of time felt altered. While winter's chill marked a stark contrast to that autumn day when her life unraveled, she found solace in the persistent cycles of nature, each blooming flower an echo of resilience, each rustling leaf a reminder of transformation. Standing by her front window, Jenny embraced the mornings with a ritual of reflection. She would often light a candle in the corner of the kitchen, allowing its gentle flame to flicker in the soft sunlight. Each moment of quiet was an affirmation of her strength and a tribute to the life she was reclaiming. It felt necessary to acknowledge the past, not as a burden, but as a cornerstone guiding her forward. Her children had begun to flourish once more, their laughter piercing through the remnants of tension that had clung to their home. They played freely in the backyard, their innocence a vivid contrast to the shadows that had once filled their lives. Every joyful giggle was a testament to resilience, their spirits unyielding and vibrant.